Well, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so very much. This is a great opportunity. I love to be able to actually share time where I can actually speak to people, or people can hear my voice instead of just seeing me as some distant editor from a magazine, or they might look at my Facebook presence, for that if they don't bother to look at YouTube videos. So I think this is a great chance to be able to touch base with people and feel like I'm actually having a conversation with people, know a little bit more about me. So hi, and thank you for this chance. I'll do the best I can then to watch for my heavy breathing. You get me all hot and bothered. Ha ha ha. No, I'll make sure that's not a problem in the future. Thank you. I grew up in the southwest suburbs of Chicago and lived there all my life, and I think it's kind of humorous that I went into writing and I went to Carl Sandburg High School in Illinois. So, although that really had nothing to do with the school at all, it's just happened to be the name of the school that I went to. So, and originally when I went to school there, I was starting and excelling in mathematics, and I was taking computer language courses and advanced courses for that, and I actually got into the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana for computer science engineering, which is not creative. But after a year I was like, I found myself writing and taking pictures, and I switched my majors toward journalism and went into design. Earliest aspiration. Wow. I can remember playing with my friend Sherry, who's my neighbor and came over all the time. And we would play, most people would play house and stuff, and I learned and played office. And we had extra toggle switches on a board, and I was like the office owner or something, and my friend who was 2 years older than me would play secretary, which was so funny. I don't know why we ended up doing that way, but I mean, I'm sure that when I was really little, I was like, I'm getting married, and did those little things as well. But I do remember that we played office, and we had, they made me a custom toggle board for things so I could feel important, and I was flipping switches, and I could feel like I was actually doing something. But profession-wise, yeah. Yep. The first poem I ever wrote was when I was 9, almost 10, for a class, and it was called Under the Sea, and it rhymed, and my mom told me what a manatee was so I could come up with a rhyme, because I wasn't old enough to know what a manatee was. But that poem actually got published in Read magazine, I think, by the time I was 11, which was funny. So yeah, and I would write after that, rhyming and such, but nothing that I really considered important or serious until after I got off to college, I would say. In college, I did work for the Daily Illini. I had a weekly column for a soap opera thing, which was so silly. But I wrote news editorial articles as well, and interviewed people, and was a photographer for local bands. Like a dog named, I'm trying to remember the name, I won't even get into that, but I worked for the newspaper. But at one point, some people I knew started a literary magazine that was called Linsey Woolsey, and I submitted stuff to that, and of course it didn't have a name listing, and I had a bunch of pieces published through that without them knowing it was me when it was being accepted. But that's probably about the extent of my writing for, beyond what I was writing as a journalism major, other than writing on my own. I took poetry classes. You were going to say something? Yeah? Sure. I always liked to sing. I never really pushed it for being something, for me to do until I found out that one of my oldest best friends, that same Sherry girl, her husband was a guitar player. I'm like, hey, let's do an acoustic band. And we played at things in Chicago. But there was no plan for actually going anywhere with it. People like hearing me sing, which I like singing, so how perfect is that? I wanted to go into writing, but I didn't know when I was in college. I just said, I find myself writing, so I'm going to go into journalism. And by the time I took a journalism design course, I figured it out like that, snap my fingers. I'm like, this is what I want to do. I want to design things, magazines, books, newspapers, something. This is what I want. And it's amazing how quickly I was like, this is great. I figured it out. So I enjoyed doing that. You mentioned things like acquaintance rape workshop facilitator. Did I fall into it? I guess I did, because when I was in college, this is when you get away from a family and you get to be on your own. You get to discover how, no offense, how easy it is for men to just feel like, oh, I can just get a girl drunk and I can have sex with her, and that's not a problem because, well, we're in college, this is what you can do. And I would hear statistics and hear stories from women about how 1 in 4 women would be raped by someone by the time they left college, and 1 in 3 in their lifetimes. And that is such a startling, frightening number. And I went to get into a class, and I ate up this knowledge with a spoon, and I wanted to do anything I could to help anyone I could. And I wrote extensively on the topic as well, because you hear a lot of stories and you don't want women's voices to go silent. And so I would write about stories of rape situations or sexism stories and try to get that out there. And people would come to me, oh, I hear you did this. My wife was actually raped. I'm like, do she need someone to talk to? You get into this, you just want to be able to try to help, because you see how the way things are sometimes and you can't sit still. So you do everything you can. Well, I won't go speaking into that, because I'd rather not, just because I don't want to stir waves, or make waves, or stir any controversy with either sex with any opinion on anything. But yeah, I agree with you. And how exactly do you go about doing that? Ouch. A family member was interested in it, but then one of the men that was in the band with me after I had left college, a friend of mine from college, Brian, he was moved to Seattle and he was getting married, and he asked me he wanted me to sing at the wedding, and he wanted me to be the minister for the wedding. So I said, well, thank you very much. I'm really honored, but I think that the ministerial job is probably enough, and I probably shouldn't be singing as well. Thank you for that. But I sang at their reception. They were impressed with that, so I was able to pull off, and it was a wonderful thing to be able to marry them as well. As a bad turn of events, I'm just going to share this little side story with you. At the same time, my mother had leukemia, and the chemo, she was back in, she was out of remission and was going through it again, and she couldn't, and she just decided, I can't have any more, I can't tolerate any more medical procedures on me. And my friend Brian heard about this, and he says, oh, for that, you don't have to minister the wedding. And I said, Brian, this is the one piece of good that is going on for me right now. I'm sure I'll be fine. My mother will be alive, and she was. So I would, I would love to do it. Oh, okay. And it was a wonderful respite. It was a great opportunity to do something like that when bad news around my own family was circling at the same time. That's really funny because I got a camera from my mom when I was in high school. I still have it here, my 35 millimeter. That doesn't work, but I just love it so much. And I would take portraits of my friends in high school. We lived right at a ravine, and they would just come over and I would take pictures of people for people. And by the time I got into college, I didn't try to push that too much, although I would take portraits of friends of mine. I think I took some fraternity group photos, the things that would appear in the yearbook. And I would do that and get paid to do that for a few of them. But that's just kind of something I stumbled into. And then once you were out of school and working, the idea of taking, oh, can I take pictures of you, just falls to the wayside. You don't think about doing that anymore because you've got a whole heft of other things to worry about on your plate. So, but it was fun to do it while I was in high school and in college.